Glad to be with you guys all again. It's been a few months, so I'm glad to be here, glad to be able to share some of the things I've been learning. Let me open up in a word of prayer. Abba, Father, we thank you for your word and for your principles that are eternal, your principles that last in every situation, that are foundational. They are the rock that we stand upon and we build our house upon. Father, I pray that we'd be able to see your insights today. Let your word speak to our hearts. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. All right, so title today is Lamp of the Body is the Eye. You may or may not know where that comes from. Not surprisingly, it's New Testament. It's actually found in Matthew chapter 6, part of the Sermon on the Mount. Let me see, we got this moving here. There we go. And let's read it together. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. Therefore, if therefore the light that's in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So I've read this verse a bunch of times. Maybe you have as well. Glanced right through it. It's part of the Sermon on the Mount. There's amazing principles to be had in the verses before and after this, chapters before and after this. And I moved right past. Of course, yeah. We're to be a light. I got that. And then it hit me about a month ago. This verse is telling us not only are we to be a light in a generic or spiritual sense, or ethereal kind of, maybe pie in the sky, maybe just like this abstract kind of idea. Oh no, there is actually a lamp of our body. Wow, it's identifying an actual lamp, the actual light. Be a light, great. What is that light? The lamp has a body. The body has a lamp. And that lamp is the eye. So it's not the nose, it's not the ear, it's not the elbow, right? It's not the light. The lamp of our body is our elbow. It just wouldn't work, right? So it obviously we're meaning something different than just the physical body part. And it goes on to tell us that not only is it the eye, but you can have a good one and you can have a bad one. Does this mean blind people not going to be getting into heaven? That's not what we're talking about, right? It's not talking about the physical eye necessarily. It's talking about something else, something different than that, right? So be a light to the world is a nice phrase, nice command. We know we're supposed to do that. How does that work? How are we supposed to do that? We've now identified that we actually have what is that light? What is that light bulb? It's the eye. So we need to dive deeper, right? We need to find out more about this and figure out what this passage is telling us. So I got some questions, right? It's always good to ask questions. Is that light just for us, or is it for others? I've heard it said that our light is to shine our path, and the Torah is a lamp to our path. It's for us, or is it for others to help others see? What is a good eye? What is a bad eye? Good question. How can I live out being a good eye? And how do I get this light anyway? And is there a connection between this idea of the lamp of the body is the eye and the greatest commandment? I'm going to say yes. That's the reason why the question's on there. Because there is a definite connection. Have you guys ever asked yourself these questions as you're reading this passage? Or were you like me, we just kind of move right past? So the first question we're going to look at is the last one. This connection with the greatest commandment. Do we know the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. This is part of the Shema, right? Hear, O Israel, love the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And then our Messiah echoes the same answer. When asked, what is the greatest commandment? He says it's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your strength. But then he also adds, and love your neighbor as yourself. It's interesting that he adds that, because as you're going to see, as we look more closely at heart, soul, strength, that means loving your neighbor as yourself, right? But it's added as an emphasis because it's the one we forget. We tend to focus on just ourself, our creation, our connection with our Creator, and not so much on our neighbor. Loving our neighbor. How do we love our neighbor? Well, it has everything to do with being this light. The lamp of the body is the eye. And it's connected to the greatest commandment. So we're going to take a look. We're going to put these in columns real quick. the heart, soul, and strength. There's the heart, strength, and soul, and there's a reason for that order. So the heart would be the things that are emotional. The strength is our abilities. Love your Lord your God with all of your strength. It's all your ability. It's all your physical resources, whether it's physical strength or whether it's the monetary or whether it's something you have, the ability to encourage. It's the outward actions and behaviors, right? And the soul is going to be the thing that is the spiritual. I'll put it another way. It's our mind, it's our body, and it's our desires, right? Let's put it this way. Just boil it down. The heart is actually about our thoughts. And when I spoke with you guys last time, it was back in April, I shared there's a bunch of verses that will actually highlight and show us that the heart has to do with the thoughts of the heart, the mind of the heart. There's a bunch of verses, and I showed them to you last time. So we can see that. You can go back and check that out if you're concerned that the heart is not the thoughts. But the strength would also be the actions, right? We talked about how it's the things that we do. We do for ourselves and we do for others. And then our soul is going to be our will. Are we bending our will? And you may recall that we got here, and when I came in, I was sharing with you about the parable of the sower. You guys, someone remember that? Excellent. So remember the first column in the soul was the hard ground where there was no no seed. And so the end result, the solution to that is to soften ourselves to be able to receive seed, right? And then the strength was that stony ground where they received seed, but it did not get a root because there's not enough for the root. And so it grew a little bit, and then it withered in the sun. And this is analogous to us coming to faith, and we have a little bit of a root. We start behaving and acting and performing God's instructions, and then we receive ridicule. Then we receive persecution, perhaps, and then we wither like that seed in the sun. And then the heart column had to do with the thorny ground, where it received the seed, and it grew a good root, and it grew up, and then what happened? It was choked out by the weeds that represented the thoughts and cares of this world and the pursuit of riches, and it was choked out, and the seed was dead, and no fruit was produced, just as if there was no seed, right? And that's what we want to guard against. So let's put this another way. Our thoughts are our ears and our eyes and our meditations. So it's the things we allow. This becomes like a gateway, if you will. What are we allowing our eyes to see, our ears to hear, and that's coming into our mind, and are we chewing on that? Our meditations are the things that we rethink about, right? So the things that we think about is one thing. A new thought comes to our mind, but then don't we keep chewing on that same thought? What if it's a negative thought? Our negative self-talk begins, and we keep beating ourselves up over and over again, even though no one else is telling us that. We're telling ourselves that. That counts too in this heart column, in the thoughts column. Our actions, this is our relationship with that physical relationship with other folks, the things that we do, our abilities are put into action. And then, of course, our relationship with our Creator is the will. Let me put it this way. The heart column is the internal, the strength column is the external, and the soul column is the eternal. We have our internal inputs, we have our external outputs, and we have our eternal outcomes. So what we're talking about today, this idea of being a light, the idea of the eye of the body, has eternal ramifications for us, right? Our scriptures are telling us that. And so let's apply the lamp is the eye of the body. The lamp of the body is the eye. You can see where the eye is already going to be in the heart column. You can see those words already on the chart there. So the eye can be good or bad, and then the body can maybe have light or darkness, and of course our soul, life or death. The lamp of the body is the eye. And so you can see how it lays out, and we're going to explore this a little more in detail. But first I want to mention that each of these columns actually impacts the other. The heart column, our thoughts, become seeds, right, that beget our actions. We don't really jump into murdering somebody without first having thought about, gosh, I'd like to murder that person, right? It's not usually an impulse that just came upon us and without a thought, even if it's quick, even if it's rapid. Any kind of action you can think of, we usually are already thinking about the action before we do it. You know what, I'm going to go open the door. Oh, I went and opened the door. We often just say the thing out loud that we're going to go do, right? Because it was a thought, we spoke it, and we go do it. This is how our body works. So the heart impacts our abilities to, and the things that we do physically, and also it impacts our soul. Similarly, our actions can impact our hearts and our thoughts. It can impact our soul and our will as well. What places do we take ourselves to that suddenly put things in front of our eyes that we don't want in front of our eyes, right? Why are we there? We chose to go there. We chose to take those actions, and now we have thoughts and we have emotions and minds and meditations that we didn't want, right? And similarly, hopefully the seed that is planted in our soul, that new creation that we became, should impact our thinking. It should impact our actions. They're all intertwined, right? That's the only point I was making with the big circle. All right. The lamp of the body is the eye. That passage ends with a very unique phrase. It says, therefore, if the light that's in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Wait a second. You guys are like me. We're like, wait, if the light is darkness, scratch, scratch. What? If the light is dark, the light can't be darkness. What we're saying here is, if that external light is pretending to be internal light, but it's really darkness, whoa, how great is that darkness, right? Yeshua spoke of the whitewashed tombs, where it's shiny on the outside, but it's death on the inside, right? It's all cleaned up and polished. The tombstones are polished and looking great and shiny, but it's death on the inside. How great is that darkness that pretends to be light? Now, there's something interesting I wanted to share. I saw this just this week. An amazing example of this in God's creation. Maybe some of you have seen this. There are some, with precious jewels, there's a study that was done on how that light passes through it. And they have the ability now to do what's called pure light, which is cross-polarized. Anyone seen this before? I see a couple of folks. Okay, excellent. For those that haven't seen this before, polarization would be like when your sunglasses, you have polarized lenses. So it typically is a one-directional light, so you can kind of hashtag going horizontal and it lets light through. But then they put a second polarized light going vertical, so now it focuses the beam. Because in this room, light's bouncing off everything, bouncing off all of us and all the walls, and we get lights in all kinds of directions. They've been able to focus that light, and they call it a pure light, where there's just one beam. And then they took slices of precious jewels and put them under a microscope. And they shined that pure light through those precious stones. And one of two things happened. For the diamonds and the spinels and the almandines, I think these are also called rubies and garnets and carbuncles. That's not been black and white. That is literally the light shining through it. It shines black and dark and black and white. So a diamond is beautiful on the outside in our natural light on this earth. It is externally it says, I am light, I am radiant. Internally, a diamond. Sorry, ladies. A diamond, dark on the inside. Who knew, right? What amazing. And yet there are other stones, other precious stones that are anisotropic. And they are actually found in Revelation in the building of the New Jerusalem. The 12 stones are listed there. All of them are anisotropic. And there's not black when the pure light passes through them. It's all the colors and all kinds of crazy patterns. And I have a picture for you. It's just amazing to see. The colors, the patterns. Imagine in New Jerusalem when our Messiah, the pure light, is sitting on the throne shining. The radiance of this structure is going to be spectacular. No actual lights needed, right? The walls themselves will glow with all the colors. Can't wait. But what a great example, right? When pure light's applied, the internal light is shown out, is discovered. Is it internal light or internal darkness, right? It shines bright or it shines dark. The internal comes to light. Pardon the pun, right? And so it is with us as well. Our internal will come to light when faced with pure light. And so if your light that's in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? What a great example. We see it in our creation, these biblical principles holding firm. I love it. So another question. is it for us or for others? What is a good eye? What is a bad eye? Have you ever considered this before? What is a good eye? I used to think I knew, but I kind of did a little discovery. I wanted to share some verses with you because the Bible tells us what it is. First, I want to mention the light of the eyes, because there's lots of scriptures that actually talk about the light of the eyes, and Yeshua was not making something up, wasn't creating something, a new idea of this idea of light and eyes being connected. Here's a couple. Proverbs 29, the poor man and the oppressor have this in common: God gives light of the eyes to both. The light of the eyes rejoices the heart, and a good report makes the bones healthy. And another one in Proverbs: the light of the righteous rejoices, but the lamp of the wicked will be put out. In Isaiah, we see that if you do not speak according to God's word, it's because there's no light in them, right? So this idea of light being present in us and shining forth, having to do with keeping God's instructions. And his instructions are love your neighbor as yourself. And that's how we end up being a true light. So what is a good eye? What is a bad eye? Interestingly, Proverbs 22 tells us that someone who has a good eye, or a generous eye, some translations will say, will be blessed. He gives of his bread to the poor. So this idea of being generous with your strength. Love the Lord your God with all your strength. It's your abilities, it's your resources, it's everything you have within you. It's your ability to connect with others and share with them. It's everything you have, every behavior you can think of for the good can be used to be a good eye, and vice versa for the bad eye. Here's Proverbs 28. A man with an evil eye hastens after riches and does not consider that poverty will come upon him. So this idea of having an evil eye is this idea of hoarding your treasures, not sharing your treasures. You're starting to see the balance. This continues on. A couple more. In Matthew 20, Yeshua was talking about this parable of the workers. This is where he went and he paid somebody a denarius to go start work for him. He found him in the morning. And they agreed. That sounds like a great wage. You got it, boss. And then the vineyard goes out a couple hours later and finds some more workers. And I'll pay you what's right. Go work. And again, a third time and a fourth time, maybe even a fifth time, even towards the end of the day when there's like 1 hour of work left. Go work. I'll pay you what's worth. And then he started from the back end, started paying folks. The ones that worked like the least, he paid them a denarius. And on down the line, everybody got a denarius, even the people who worked less hours, until he got to the full-time people who worked a full day for the agreed upon denarius, and he gave them a denarius. And they grumbled. They grumbled. And Yeshua says this about him: is it not lawful for me to do with my own what I want with my own things? Right? I'm not, you have not been treated poorly. You have not been wronged. It's your perception that you have been wronged. Or is your eye evil because I am good? Right? That idea of an evil eye is they were coveting. It's that coveting. I want to gather everything for myself, and it's about me, not about the others, right? It's like the perception that something evil has been done to me when it has not been done to you evilly, right? But their expectation changed, right? And their expectation didn't get met. Their expectation changed when the first people who worked 1 hour got the same amount. And they thought, well, for sure, we're going to get more. And then it didn't come to fruition. How often is that true in our lives where we have an expectation that, where'd that come from? I just decided that was the expectation. And then when it doesn't get met, God let me down. Or did I set a false expectation of what I thought would happen in this situation? 1 Samuel, we see David in the cave with Saul. You remember Saul was in there relieving himself, and David was hiding in there already, and he had a chance to put him to death. But what does David say? My eye spared you. I will not stretch out my hand against God's anointed. Right? He had this idea of the eye sparing. There are dozens of verses. Ezekiel's full of them, 8, 9, 10 times. It says, my eye will not pity you. They're talking about God's eye not pitying the prophecy that's going to come true about demise that's coming to Israel. But here we see David using the idea of the eye sparing. You can see it's the same. It's really the same idea. A good eye is one that will have pity or spare, have mercy upon others that maybe don't deserve mercy, right? So we can get the sense of what a good eye is versus a bad eye, right? You guys are with me so far? Excellent. Additionally, we see right in this verse, here's our verse in the middle, a chiasm is simply I'll call it a sandwich. There's two thoughts on the outside that point to a thought in the middle, right? The verse before and the verse after. Sometimes they can be very long. This one just two parts. So we have our verse here, our passage about the lamp of the body is the eye, and before it, it's talking about treasures in heaven. Don't store up treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and thieves steal, but instead store up your treasures in heaven. There your heart will be, right? Again, there's the heart. It's about your heart. It's about the internal that is leading to a good eye. And the good eye has to do with your treasures and what's your approach to those treasures. And so on the other side of our passage is the idea of God or riches. You can't serve two masters, right? So sandwiched in between this conversation about how we deal with riches, how we deal with treasures, how we deal with the things that in this life that we are pursuing is our passage of the lamp of the body is the eye. And do you have a good eye or do you have a bad eye? It's the same conversation, right? So just another evidence that a good eye is really about whether you're being generous or being hoarding with our treasures and with our abilities and with what other things do we treasure, right? That's the conversation that's being had here. Oh, okay. So also in Mark 7, this is interesting. Yeshua is saying, here he is talking about what comes out of a man is a conversation about the cleansing of the hands, and their Sadducees are upset that they didn't wash their hands prior to eating. And he's talking about what comes out of a man that defiles a man, and from within, it comes from within, out of the heart. See the heart is the internal thought processes. And what comes out of the heart of men? There's a pretty amazing list here. Evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness. And before we go on, I'd like to point out that some of those things are external actions. Adultery, for example. Adultery doesn't just happen without first thinking, maybe I want to commit some adultery. Right? It has to occur to you first as a thought, as an internal, before it becomes the external. Right? So this is a pretty crazy list. Evil thoughts and adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceits, and lewdness. And what is equal with all of that on the same list is an evil eye, along with blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these things are evil, and they come from within. They come from the heart column, and they defile a man. So the evil eye is on this list. This is what I'm saying, how we treat others and how we love our neighbor is yes, it's in the heart column and it becomes acted out into the strength column, but really it impacts the soul column, if you remember our chart. So our eye deals with the money and how we deal with our things. Are we generous or hoarding? Do we make it our God, this thing that we're pursuing? What that means is, are we putting that in front of our Creator and His ways and His desires for our life? Said another way, our eye is how well we perceive others. It's how well we perceive our neighbor. And we're going to talk about what would I mean by that. So how do you get this light? First, we're going to set a little another foundation here. Psalms 18:28. You will light my lamp. The Lord my God will enlighten my darkness, right? God, our Creator, is the one who brings that light to us. Psalms 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Of whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? So our light is connected to our salvation. And it comes from our Creator, it comes from our Messiah. Psalms 37. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust Him. He will bring it to pass. He'll bring your righteousness out as light. Your deeds, your actions will be credited as light if your internal is aligned with Him, right? And your justice will shine as the noonday. So that light comes from Him. And this gets interesting. In 1 John has lots to say about light, right? But in 1 John, he's talking about the message we have heard from the Messiah and declare to you that God is light, and in Him there's no darkness, right? So this is that, are we full of light or full of darkness? There is no halfway. You're not kind of dark, kind of light. I'm kind of gray. I think the Bible called that lukewarm, right? Lukewarm, and there was a church of Laodicea? Yeah? Am I saying that right? Laodicea? Lao. And what's interesting about that, and I didn't put it into this teaching, but I'm bringing it up right now. The church of Laodicea was told to get riches so they can buy what is righteousness of God and buy new clothing so they can change their garments. And they're told to buy eye salve so that they could see. It's connected to the same idea, the same thought of getting light. God is our light. We want to be able to see correctly. The people in Laodicea were lukewarm. Yeah, we've got some light and some darkness. We're in the middle. You're not seeing correctly, right? There is no middle. The middle is darkness. This verse goes on. If we say we have fellowship with him and we walk in darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. We can't walk in darkness and call it light, right? It's that same as those stones. What is internal will come forth and will be shown forth when the pure light is presented. If we walk in the light, he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another. The blood of our Messiah, Jesus Christ, and the Son cleanses us from all sin. Okay. Ephesians 5, 8, and 9 talks about you were once darkness, but now you are light because of the Lord, in the Lord. So walk as children of the light. This is all back to being a light. The eye of the body, the lamp of the body is the eye. Walk as children of the light and have a good eye. It says the fruit of the Spirit, which really the fruit of this light, is in all goodness, it's in all righteousness, it's in all truth. A couple more, because we're going to take it a slightly different direction here. In Psalms 119, this is in the, there are sections in Psalms 119 of the alphabet. This would be in the Pei section, it's a Hebrew letter. Your testimonies are wonderful, and therefore my soul keeps them. The entrance of your words give light. It gives understanding to the simple. Is this the idea of salvation, where the word comes into our hearts and we are a new creation, we are covenanting now with our Creator. We've come to faith in our Creator, and the words have entered into our hearts, and we have light has also entered into our hearts. This is the idea of being born again. Nicodemus had a conversation with Yeshua about what's rebirth? How do I come to this rebirth? The word comes into our hearts. Interesting, in John 1, he talks a lot about life and light. He says, in him, our Messiah, was life, and the life of the light was men, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. There's no companionship between the light and darkness. Did not comprehend it. And then in John 1:9, just a few verses later, our Messiah was the true light, which gives light to every man coming into the world. Could this perhaps be talking about our first birth, right? We know we see the light comes into our hearts at our second birth, but at the first birth, is there light? Some of you have probably seen this as well, but it's worth showing because it's just amazing, this connection between light and life and birth and rebirth. Scientists have discovered that when the sperm meets the egg, there is a light flash. That happens. I see some head nods. Some of you have seen this. We're just going to watch it. There it goes. So there's three different ones that are going. The one on the left is not going to go in this video because it comes later. Yeah, so the video is kind of choppy. But you can see this flash of light that happens. Amazing, right? Life is created, a soul is created, and light is present. We are called to be the light. Let's see if it's back on. All right, here we go. That same light that now enters us when we come to faith in Messiah, when we call upon His name, when we're born a second time, our rebirth, that same light enters us. Amazing to see. Science lining up with godly principles yet again. In John 8, just a couple more of these. I am the light of the world, Yeshua says. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, will not have a bad eye, but will have a good eye, but have the light of life. John 12, I have come as light into the world, right? He is our light. He is the reason why we are able to have light and show light. 2 Corinthians, for it is God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shone in our hearts to give the light of knowledge of the glory of God in the face of our Messiah, Yeshua. So Messiah is our light. Messiah is our life. It's only through Him that we can actually have that good eye as we're connecting with Him on a daily basis, and thus our inputs are godly, our inputs are scriptural and not worldly. Right? We have a choice of being full of light or full of darkness. We talked. There's no middle ground. Right? We're not going to be. You don't get to be lukewarm because that's just. There's no middle. What's the middle between light and darkness? A gray, dim, dusk. No, that counts as darkness, right? The light is going to be that pure light. And so therefore, if the light is in you in darkness, how great is that darkness? So Messiah is our light. He's the reason for us having light or not having light. So it has everything to do with our relationship with the Messiah, whether or not we have a good eye or a bad eye. Right? You see how we're getting there, right? You can see how we're making these steps. It's not a huge leap, but it's important to see and understand this as a foundation. It comes back to how loving our neighbor, right? And how do I live out being a good eye? It almost sounds new agey, huh? I'm a good eye. And if I tried to find different pictures of eyes, I chose one that had two eyes because there's so many that have the one eye or the eye in the forehead. Or no, we're not. So Satan corrupts what God's principles actually are, right? He takes what is already truth and he twists it. And so, yeah, being a good eye is actually a good thing. It's not a new agey concept. Our Messiah spoke of it. How do we do it? So being a good eye, how do we live this out? So in reality, it is a purification process, right? That begins when we enter the covenant relationship with our Creator through our Messiah. That purification process begins when we come to faith and we receive His light, and it continues until the moment we pass from this earth. 2 Corinthians 10 talks about taking your thoughts captive, right? This is this is on the nose with what we're talking about as far as being a good eye or being a bad eye. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but are mighty in God, for pulling down of strongholds, casting down arguments, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. So our eye is how we perceive others, and that perception is actually in our heads. It's our thoughts, it's our emotions. How are we perceiving these people around us and what they've done to us or done to somebody else or done what we think we see them doing? Is that the reality, right? So it really becomes this idea that thoughts are actually seeds, right? Remember that the heart column becomes the seed that leads to our actions. The heart column becomes the seed that leads to our actions. Forgot to put the chart back up there. There you go. So how often do our facts, I got the facts. How often do our facts really are just showing our conclusions? I see some things that lead me to my conclusion. I've concluded it, so now for my conclusion is a fact. When in fact, maybe we're not looking at the circumstances compared to the spirit behind the circumstances or the situation behind the situation, right? What happened before. We'll start with a couple examples here. Somebody passes me on the highway going high speed and cuts me off and slams on the brake. We've all been there. Do we get angry? How dare they? Look how rude they're being. I have facts. They cut me off. Is there something behind the situation? They're in a hurry. Maybe somebody's in the hospital and they're trying to get there desperately, right? We don't know their situation, but can we give this idea of favorable judgment? Can we give this idea of, let's not get mad at what we don't know yet, right? We'll have to get there and find the answer. But I'm not going to be able to find the answer, so I don't need to worry about it. Let me just back off, give the guy some space so I don't get in a wreck myself, right? And, maybe back up. Maybe he is just rude and arrogant and cutting people off and wants to be first. It could be. Why does that matter to me? Am I going to change my stance? Am I going to change my inner thoughts, my inner peace for him? No, I'm not. This example, what you talking about? Right? You hear somebody say, what you talking about? I hear, what you said was stupid. You dummy, what you talking about? I have facts. They asked me what I was talking about. And I put my thoughts into their head to tell them what they're thinking about me. You follow that? We do it all the time. They think I'm stupid. They think I'm a dummy. Or were they really saying, hey, please tell me more about what you meant by that? They just said it kind of gruffly. Right? I don't know what they're thinking is our point. Right? Our facts are really our perception of a situation, and we don't necessarily know what all is going on behind the scenes, right? So I wanted to give some examples of that. How often do our emotions really show us what we believe? Right? I wanted to give you some practical kind of things. Our emotions show us what we believe. They don't always validate the truth. Our emotions rather validate what we already believe about we come with preconceived notions, we come with this preconceived idea, especially if we heard it from somebody else about that person or that thing over there, and then we see something that, see, there you go, I got facts again. Do I really, right? Have I really gotten to the bottom of it, or is it even my place to get to the bottom of it? Maybe I just need to leave that alone and not tell other people how bad those things are, right? So emotions show us what we are already believing about our situation. We can't trust our feelings, can't trust our emotions because they're temporary. We need to be rooted in the foundation of our Messiah and His truths. If we want a different feeling, we need a different thought. If we want a different feeling, we need a different thought. It's this idea of taking those thoughts captive, like we've been talking about. I gave you a couple of examples. There's lots of examples you could probably think of. We could probably go around the room and everybody would have a different example altogether. So the fruit of the Spirit actually could be seen as emotions. What I mean by that is our thoughts are the seed that lead to the feelings, that fruit the feelings, which result in our body, our strength. We love the Lord our God with all of our strength and our abilities to act accordingly to the feelings that were seeded by our thoughts. Are we seeding in our thoughts the fruits of the Spirit or the fruits of the flesh, the fruits of the world? Right? We have this choice. We have this choice. This is what it means to be a good eye. This idea of having a favorable judgment. What we've been talking about is this idea, this Hebrew concept of a favorable concept. A favorable judgment. I'm going to judge favorably until we know for sure that there's a real thing. And even then, we're looking for restoration. Is there a way to be able to restore that relationship and be able to come back to help them see salvation in Christ, right? Themselves, if they've truly done something wrong. A place of forgiveness, place of repentance, right? Favorable judgment. Can we see people as God sees people? Because we don't tend to do that, right? But as we're being a good eye, as we're fellowshipping with our Messiah, with our Creator on a daily basis, as our inputs are scriptural and worship and communion with Him, time with Him, we begin to see people as God sees them. As people who are hurting, people who are in need of salvation, people who are in need of light, right? Now this verse in Romans, Paul talks exactly about what we're talking about what it means to give favorable judgment. And as I read this passage, it's a little bit lengthy, not too much, but you're going to hear he covers every aspect of life you could possibly conceive of. If you were to make a list of things where we could show favorable judgment, you wouldn't come up with a list that Paul came up with. It's an amazing list. Let's take a look. So as I read this, think about how he is calling for favorable judgment. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love, in honor and respect for one another, right? Giving preference to one another. Not lagging in diligence, but fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in trials and tribulations, continuing steadfastly in prayer, distributing the needs to the saints, given to hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. This is all the idea of loving your neighbor. It's all the idea of being a good eye, of being a light. Be of the same mind towards one another. And it goes on. Do not set your mind on high things, but actually associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion, right? With your facts. Repay no one evil for evil, but have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as depends upon you, live peaceably with all men, with all other humans, as much as it depends on you. Beloved, do not avenge yourself, but the Lord says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. So therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. If in so doing, you'll heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So you can see what I mean. He is talking about favorable judgment in every aspect of of life and of dealing with other people. And our life is all about dealing with other people, right? We don't get to go, I guess some people can, go off into the wilderness, desert, and live by yourself. I guess it's possible, but at some point, you have to deal with a person, even then. So examples of favorable judgment, scriptural examples. I was going to bring a couple of these. We already talked about David in Saul's cave, where he had a sparing eye. My eye spared you there. He saw that this was really God's anointed, but so was David. David, you're going to be next king. What faster way to make that happen? And take Saul out, right? How many of us in that situation would have? Well, that seems right. Yeah, God's already told me I'm going to be next. Sure. David didn't see it that way. Favorable judgment. 2 out of 12 spies. They came back. Joshua and Caleb. The land is good. Not only, sure, there's some big people there. No worries. Our God is greater. Right? The other 10 came back with their facts. There are huge people. What did they say? We are grasshoppers in their eyes. Did they ask him? Again, they're putting their thoughts into somebody else's head and telling themselves what they think about them. Whew, you follow that? They're thinking about us in this way. But Joshua and Caleb had the favorable judgment. They had the good eye. Ruth with Naomi, everything's falling apart. I will stick with you. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. Right? She had favorable judgment. Didn't disown Naomi even when everything fell apart in a land far away. Or how about Abraham praying for Sodom? Right? How about 50? What if there's 50 people and he works his way down? What, even if there's 10? And God agrees, yeah, I will spare them. Why? Because of favorable judgment. Right? And we could dive deep into each one of these, but there's dozens and dozens. Our scriptures are full of examples of this. Finally, Yeshua and that woman who was accused of adultery, right? And he writes in the ground, and he has some wise answers, and suddenly he looks up and where are your accusers, right? And he forgives her sins, and she goes and sin no more. He extended favorable judgment to her where everyone else was coming with non-favorable judgment. They came with the evil eye. Yeshua had the good eye. So, the lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, the whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light is in you is actually darkness, how great is that darkness? We are to be this lighthouse. This lighthouse represents a great example of what we're talking about in terms of a way of summing this up. A lighthouse stands on the shore and shines into the turmoil, the storm, the trials and tribulations, the darkness that's out there at sea, and the people are out at sea in those ships. They use that light to navigate and find the way. They can find the path because the lighthouse exists and is standing there. Because the lighthouse is standing firm, it's solid, right? Imagine being the lighthouse. You're in that same storm, that same darkness. You're there, but you're standing firm on solid ground, shining the light as a good eye. You don't get days off. You don't get to take a break. You don't get to go inside during the storm. I'll come back out when it's calmer. The light should never go out, right? In fact, that reminds me, in Proverbs 31, it talks about the woman of valor, and it says her lamp will not be put out by night. In that context and in that culture, they would leave the lamp on all night because it represented somebody who was home and less likely to get robbed, right? If the light goes out, nobody's home, maybe the thief is going to try and break in. They would rather eat less food, maybe be a little hungry, than lose all their oil for that night. To the lamp to go out by night is a disgrace. It's a piece of part of, like, almost shameful, if you will. Like we don't really think about that now. We turn off our lights and go to bed, right? I want good darkness to get some good sleep. But in those cultures, that lamp stayed on all night. It didn't go out, and they worked hard to make sure they had the light. They prepared for that to make sure that lamp was ready to stay on all night. So we are too to be lighthouse, preparing our light to stay on, even in the trial times, even in the darkness and tribulation. We will be that light for others. And another piece I wanted to bring out is we've been talking about this as personally, how it affects me. But we also know that Paul talks about, especially Paul, the body as the congregation, right, as the church. So now we say the lamp of the fellowship, the lamp of the congregation, the lamp of the body of Christ, is the eyes. It's how we see and how we perceive others. Are we a light in the world ourselves, in this fellowship, this congregation? I was talking to an old friend from back in the day, near high school times, and random call out of the blue, and he's in a tough place. He's getting divorced. His kids don't talk to him, and we asked him about maybe find fellowship. He has no friend. He said he has nobody. Well, maybe you can find some friends and acquaintances in the church. No, he's been going to church. The church, well, they didn't have a good eye, right? They took one side. They told him he was wrong. Get out. You don't belong here. You're not saved. You're not. They were not a lighthouse to him in his troubled time and darkness, right? So the lamp of that body was not a good eye. It resulted in him. I don't want anything to do. Yeah, we come to this fellowship. We come to our congregation. We come to learn from our biblical principles and learn from our Messiah. And we're not going to have it all together. We get that. We know that. But we also want to be extending love and grace and a good eye to others and our fellow man. And as a body, we want to be a good eye to our communities and to our world itself. We are to be a lighthouse if we are to have a good eye. So we've discovered that our body does have a lamp. That lamp is our eye, and that eye is our perception of how we see the world. Right? This is what loving your neighbor actually means. Abba, Father, thank you for your word today. Thank you for showing us how to be a light and how to be a lamp and how to have a good eye. Father, we pray that we would commune with you more and more so that we could change our inputs to reflect a good eye and not a bad eye, knowing that our thoughts are seeds to our behaviors, Father. We pray that you would take this message and dwell on it throughout the week, Father.